Well, Johnny, we seem to start the show off in exactly the same way every week by just talking about how much has been happening in the NRL over the last 7 days. But, mate, it's absolutely ramped up. I mean, we had Jerome Luai's latest recruitment shenanigans. Mate, he loves the spotlight, Jerome. And then, mate, on Saturday, mate, how do you explain that Dolphins performance? I mean, fair dinkum, mate, we had been talking about them, well, you had been talking about them as being a potential grand finalist. And mate, they took out the biggest of redhead matches and just torched their 2026 premiership aspirations. And mate, that was it all. On Saturday night, Adam G very graciously hosted Anthony Tupou night at Allianz Stadium. And mate, that was before we even got to Sunday. Mate, Sunday was literally the NRL's equivalent of the wacky races. Mate, there were just insane barnstorming finishes, things that people didn't expect. Mate, we've got plenty to dig into. But Johnny, mate, that wasn't the biggest topic of the week. Mate, there was only one particular thing that caught our attention last week, and that was Laurie Daley's Blues and their emphatic victory in Game 3 of Origin. Mate, this was Lazarus. And I'm talking about the Jerusalem one, mate, not the Canberra one. It was Muhammad Ali at the Rumble in the Jungle. Mate, there was a little bit of John Wick thrown in there as well. It was a completely unexpected, bona fide blue beatdown. And mate, I'm sure you'll agree with me here. It was undeniably awesome. But Johnny, we are going to get onto that. What is happening with you, mates?
Yeah, good day, Noz, and yeah, hello, listeners. Yeah, on my side, it's been a big week of sport for me. Between Wimbledon, the FIFA World Cup, and of course the Origin decider. I've had plenty to keep me entertained. But look, my highlight was being at Allianz Stadium to watch one of the games. Genuine good guys, and Roosters legend Daniel Tupou plays 300th game for the club. Special night for a special Rooster. No doubt we'll be digesting that a little bit later on. And obviously, we've got quite a bit to talk about throughout this show. So over to you, Captain Noz. Mate, take us up for the first hit up, please.
Mate, I'm not going to spend too much time with the intro this week. Speed around, lots of things happening. We need to be on our game, mate. Can't be any bloke this week. What caught our eye? Again, so much happening, but we've got a few rippers to discuss. The grapple. Now, Origin 2026 is in the records book, mate. It's got a big blue tick next to it. We're going to have our final Origin wash up and thoughts. The round preview. Now, again, we mentioned this last week, JC, but with Origin in the review, mate, we're really starting to move into the business end of the season. So we can talk about the upcoming fixtures and freeballing. Mate, I know everyone's been looking forward to this. It's coming back to me this week, and I'm taking my inspiration from our main man, Asher. So people will have to stick around to see what that actually means at the end of the program. And guys, it'll be well worth the wait. But first of all, Johnny, mate, I feel it. I feel it.
I feel the need for speed. Ow! The need for speed.
Let's start with the Tigers versus the Warriors. Look, I hate being too scathing on teams, but look, the Tigers were absolutely terrible. Mate, the Warriors never really got out of second gear to win this one. Mate, based on their current form, I actually think the Tigers are the worst performing team in the competition at the moment.
Mm.
And what a massive fall after starting the season so good. Look, for the Warriors, I thought James Fisher-Harris, mate, he was outstanding. He really led them up front. And I think the win all but assures the Warriors of at least a top four finish this season. Let's move to the Dolphins versus the Sharks. Mate, wow. Not sure if anyone picked this result. I surely didn't. 66 points to nil. The Sharks over the Dolphins at Redcliffe. Mate, I know the Dolphins had a few players missing and a couple of boys backing up from Origin, but, mate, this result absolutely stunned me. For the Sharks, Nico Hines had an absolute field day, crossing for 2 tries, kicking 11 from 11, and finishing with a club record of 30 points in the match. So outstanding effort from Nico Hines. And this result now, unfortunately, sees the Dolphins slip to 7th on the ladder, whilst the Sharks have surged into the top 4, really giving their points differential a massive boost in the process. Let's move to the Bulldogs versus the Raiders. Look, maybe not as big a wow as the Sharks' performance over the Finns, but still, this Raiders' performance really surprised me, considering the Dogs probably had a little bit more to play for. The Raiders, mate, they absolutely rolled the Bulldogs in a pretty dominant performance. Unfortunately, the game was a little bit overshadowed by that pretty serious injury, I think, to Stephen Crichton, where he was stretchered off the field with some sort of a shoulder nerve injury. So I hope it's not too serious for Crichton. As for the bigger picture, mate, I think this result all but ends the Bulldogs' finals hopes. And despite the win, I still can't see Canberra playing finals either. Let's go to my Roosters versus your boys, the Eels. Look, I could probably spend my whole speed round talking about Daniel Tupu's incredible milestone, but look, don't worry, I won't. Mate, Toops became just the fifth Rooster, played or reached 300 games for the club, joining the likes of Anthony Minicello, Luke Ricketson, Jared, and obviously Mitchell Orbison. Mate, what a legend. What a career so far. 15 years with the Roosters. And what a humble and respected person by everybody. Mate, they really should call him BP. The guy's a quiet achiever, a man of very few words. And something that I didn't actually realise, you may not like this, he's actually a Parramatta Rooster. So there's another one that you boys let slip away. But look, what a great way he celebrated his milestone with a win. He bagged a hat trick on the night in typical Tupu style. A few aerial leaps in the air and a couple of little twinkle toes down the sideline to score 3 tries. So well done, Daniel Tupu, and also was watched on by Tongan loyalty for this game as well. And maybe just outside of Toops, as for the Roosters, look, they were far from convincing, especially in that first half. And a lot of credit I've got to give to your Eels. I thought they defended quite bravely in the first half, and obviously the second half it started to open up. So yeah, well done, Daniel Tupu.
Rabbitohs versus Knights. Now, mate, the first thing I'm going to say about this game is what a fantastic encounter it was. Mate, at first half, South traded tries with Newcastle, almost tries. But then in the back end of the game, mate, as we headed towards the last 15 minutes, it became really, really tense. The Knights stormed back. Mate, they almost erased that 14-point deficit. Alas, mate, they came up just a little bit short, but it certainly wasn't due to a lack of trying. Mate, there were great performances from both teams across the park. For South, Brendan Smith, mate, he's finally showing a semblance of form after 2 pretty lacklustre and troubled years. Tallis Duncan, I think you were right about Tallis Duncan a few weeks ago, Johnny. Mate, he is showing all the signs of being a pretty special footballer. And Jai Gray, mate, he was at his usual irrepressible best. On the other side, mate, in the red and blue, Kalen Ponga. Mate, again, you can see this week after week, but he really showed why he's one of the game's special talents. He almost willed his team to victory with a 3-try haul. Unfortunately, the Knights didn't quite get there, with his last pass just going awry. Sea Eagles versus Cowboys. Oh, mate, this story was about the pesky Cowboys. They just would not go away in this game. It was an encounter that everyone had pretty much penciled in for the Sea Eagles, but the boys took an early lead. Manly scored the next 3 tries to take a 14-6 advantage into the half. But, mate, in the second stanza, the Cowboys were led by a very unlikely player in Braden Burns. Mate, he was channeling his inner Mal Meninga. And the North Queensland team pretty much followed him. Mate, they levelled the scores right at the death to take them to Golden Point. And, mate, we've said this before, cometh the man, cometh the hour. In Golden Point, Scotty Drinkwater calmly stepped up, easy as you like it, potted the field goal and, mate, gave the Cowboys a deserved win over a Manly team. But I think this Manly team might be reaching for the smelling salts just to make sure that they wake up before next week's round. Storm versus Titans. Now, I was thinking a little bit about this game when I was watching it, JC. There isn't much of a talent gap between these two teams, as strange as that might sound. But, mate, if you were going to write a script based on the historical tendency of both of these clubs, mate, this game would have been it. The Titans fought their way back to level pegging after getting behind by 12 points. And then, mate, the most Titans ending possible. They let the Storm march almost 100 metres in the last 90 seconds to lose on, wait for it, JC, of all things, a Nick Meaney barge over try, which came about 30 seconds from the end. Mate, the Storm may be sniffing the 8, but geez, mate, nothing in this game indicates that they are going to do anything other than make up the numbers, even if they do make the semi-finals. Okay, now we mentioned, Johnny, that the round just had so many things happening, but what caught your eye, mate?
Look, obviously Daniel Tupu topped my list, but I've already given him the praise he deserves. A couple of other moments that really caught my eye over the weekend was also in the Roosters Parramatta game. It's actually Cody Ramsey. I don't know if you watched it, but watching him live on Saturday night, mate, I just didn't realise just how quick the guy is. A couple of times he put the foot down and mate, he absolutely left defenders behind. Mate, pretty much every time he touched the ball, he looked bloody dangerous. So, mate, it was great to see, especially after everything he's been through in his career to date. And the other moment you sort of touched on it before was Laurie Daley at the end of the Origin decider. You could just see the relief on his face, mate. It was like the weight of an entire state had been lifted off his shoulders when the Blues sealed that win up at Suncorp, mate. After everything that has been said about him over the series, you couldn't help but be happy for Loz and the New South Wales Blues. So I think now Loz will happily sail away into the sunset, and I think coaching's going to be a distant memory for Laurie Daley, I think.
Right, just onto your section there. Firstly, you've somehow managed to jam in 2 what caught your eye. I don't think I didn't notice you did a what caught your eye in the speed round as well with Tupou. Mate, I'm on to you, Johnny Charlie. And mate, the second thing, mate, there is an explanation for Cody Ramsey that's maybe not necessarily his speed. It could also be that the Parramatta players are really slow, but hell, I'll leave that one aside. Now, mate, onto what caught my eye. Now, this is going to go back to last week's Origin game. And, mate, you will have seen this as well in the lead-up. The lead up to Origin's always fantastic. It gets me really excited. But Jai Arrow, mate, he was given the job of bringing out the Origin trophy before the game. And it was a real rallying moment for the game of rugby league, mate, considering Jai's motor neurone disease diagnosis, the fundraising, the awareness campaign that's been held over the last few months. It was also pivotal in the lead up. This is one of the biggest and most important nights in Australian sport. And Jai had the very important job of bringing that Origin trophy out. And mate, then he walks out in an absolutely ridiculous and may I add, magnificent cane-toed hat. Did you see the cane-toed hat, Johnny? Mate,
Yes,
it was
yes,
fantastic.
yes.
Mate, at first, I don't even know what the hell it was. It looked vaguely like Harry's car from the start of Dumb and Dumber. Now, mate, the reason I like this so much is we've spent 6 weeks, like maybe even longer, maybe like the better part of 2 months, talking about Origin like it was the Yalta conference. And mate, in one fell swoop, Jai put the whole thing into context. It might have been the smallest and most inconsequential of things, but mate, to me, it was a great encapsulation of rugby league and our great sense of larrikinism, our almost infinite capacity for ridiculousness. Mate, it also proved that life is at its absolute best when you play hard, but when you laugh equally hard. So well played, Jai. I absolutely love it. Mate, I'm going to give him an arrow shot in tribute. Okay. That's it, mate. On to the grapple. Now, I mentioned this in the introduction, Johnny. Origin 2026 is now in the books, but what are your final thoughts about it, mate?
Okay, mate, this is my summary. Look, I think I might have mentioned it in last week's show. Look, it all started with the Blues forwards who really, really dominated the middle in that decider, led by obviously Payne Haas and co. And I thought the bench provided pretty good impact when they all came on. I thought we easily won the middle, and it clearly gave the Blues the platform to play the game, I think, on their terms, which we had not seen in Origin 1 and Origin 2. And then from there, mate, Nathan Cleary, he took control. This was the Cleary we've all been waiting to see this series. He owned some pretty big moments. The solo try, the one-on-one steal on Selwyn Cobbo. I thought his kicking game was pretty good, and his game management was first class. So well done, Nathan. And he also picked up the Wally Lewis medal. I also thought Bradman Best had a terrific game.
Yep.
Mate, this guy, he definitely cemented himself as a genuine big game player. the joke going around now is that he's the man for the deciders. He's had a couple of game 3 matches of his life. Liam Martin was vintage. Liam Martin, mate. New South Wales definitely missed his relentless aggression and niggle in games 1 and 2. He definitely gets under the opposition's skin, and you can see he sort of lifts everyone around him as well. So well done to Liam Martin. And I got a special mention also to Mitchell Moses. I think I was talking about this during our little chat during the game. I question him being selected in Origin 3, probably like many, but I actually think his long kicking game in that Origin 3 decider was probably one of the best long kicking games I've ever seen. Mate, early on, Queensland were applying a lot of pressure on the Blues line, but it was pretty much Moses' booming kicks that really got New South Wales out of trouble a few times. So well done, Mitchell Moses. And I thought him and Nathan really combined pretty well in that decider. Way, way better than the first 2 games. Mate, as for Queensland, look, mate, just about every one of their key players and also the forwards had their quietest game of the series to date. They just made too many errors. And to be fair, they also had probably a few tough calls go against them. None bigger than the Bostock sort of hand of God moment. But look, let's not let those moments distract from the result. New South Wales were clearly the better side and thoroughly deserved to win the decider. So well done the Blues. Very happy with that result last week.
Mate, there's a few things I'm going to talk about here. The first is I'm going to give a massive rap to you because you mentioned it in your last week's Origin predictions / prognostications. Mate, you talked about New South Wales' success depending on their forwards turning up. And mate, again, you said it there, the New South Wales forwards definitely turned up. It was a straight up New South Wales basher. Mate, Yeo, Haas, Barnett, Martin, Young, Murray, Robson, even Blake Brayley, mate, they belted the trot out of the Queenslanders. But there's one bloke I'm just going to give a special mention to, and you didn't mention him, and that is Adam Fanua-Blake. Mate, he was literally like Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now. He almost stole, mate, he almost stole the show with very, very limited screen time. Mate, how long do you reckon he played for? What do you reckon his game time minutes were?
15 or 18.
It wasn't quite that. It was 27 minutes. But, mate, in that 27 minutes, he was near on the player of the game. He dominated the Queensland forwards. Now, you said about Queensland as well, mate. And I'm actually stealing this one from my dad. Like, they pretty much looked like they came with cigars in their top pocket just for the victory lap. They just did not turn up. I can't point to one of their players who played well, like not one. And as you said, with that star-studded lineup, it's pretty remarkable. The other person I'm going to have to single out here, Johnny, is Supercoach Billy Slater. Now, he's been sitting back like the Cheshire Cat while we've all been absolutely ripping into Coach Loz. And I'm not going to say that bagging wasn't justified. I mean, Daly's coaching in games 1 and games 2 was pretty ordinary. But I thought Slater's efforts last week were arguably worse. Mate, his team was nowhere near up for the game. They ran on the field and they were on the back foot from the opening kickoff. The other thing, and this is probably even more damning, is he made absolutely no adjustments, like none, when it was obvious that the New South Wales outside backs were moving up really quickly to cut off the Maroon space. Mate, they spent the entire night passing from sideline to sideline and going nowhere. They were trays ordinaire. But my final question, JC, is, does the entire New South Wales Rugby League commentariat / fan base owe Laurie Daley an apology? Mate, nobody, and mate, I'm actually putting my hand up for this as well. Nobody except Laurie and the New South Wales playing group saw this result coming. Mate, Laurie has literally coached the Blues to a history-making series win that we didn't think he had in him. So it was the sweetest win of all for Laurie Daley. He is a bona fide New South Wales legend based on his playing career. But, mate, that effort, I think we all just need to tip our hat. We spent a lot of time criticising him, but, mate, he well and truly has earned our praises. So well done to Laurie Daley. That was fantastic, mate. Okay, now, I mentioned this, Johnny, in introduction. Origin, now in the record books. In terms of the competition, the plot is thickening every week. So lead us on, mate, to this week's round preview.
Okay, we're going to start with Penrith versus the Broncos. Look, Penrith should have all their stars back on deck, and I think this is where they're charge towards a final really begins, which probably spells bad news for the Broncos, unfortunately. As mentioned many times recently, mate, Brisbane have really lost their way and are now on a 8-game losing streak. So I actually think this is going to become 9 straight losses for the Broncos, and I think Penrith will win by plenty.
But in retrospect, the opening game, I think it was the opening game of the season, if memory serves me. But mate, the opening game between these two teams was indicative of how the season was going to pan out. Like the Panthers used it as a launching pad for a season, which up to this point has been just incredibly dominant. Mate, the Broncos, they just showed that they're going to go out without a whimper. And I think that's how this game's going to turn out as well, Johnny. I think the Panthers are going to bash them up.
Let's move to the Sharks versus the Knights. Look, it's the red hot Sharks taking on the late finishing Knights in what should be a pretty good contest. On current form and with the game at Sharks Stadium, you'd expect Cronulla to get the job done. Look, if they win this one, I think they've pretty much cemented a top 4 finish, which is going to look pretty likely. But look, I've just got this feeling about Newcastle. I'm going to go against the form guide here, and I'm going to predict the Knights to win in an upset at
Mate,
Shark Park.
a boil over. There you go, at Shark Park, no less, as you said. Mate, you said it in speed round about the Sharks' performance against the Dolphins. Wow. Mate, they were devastating. Now, admittedly, the Redcliffe team were horrendous, but they also seem to have a little bit more cohesion with Hines and Trindle. That has been a problem. We talked about it in the round preview last week, but those two certainly gelled last week, and we end up getting 66 points on the board. Now, the Knights, on the other hand, mate, their Achilles heel continues to be their lack of focus. They need to perform for 80 minutes. They had too many lapses against the South team, which I don't think is very good, and that ended up really costing them. I have a bit of a feeling about the Knights, but it's not so strong that I think they're going to have an upset here, Johnny. I think with the Sharks' form and the fact that they're playing at Shark Park is going to get them over the line.
Let's go to the Raiders versus the Rabbitohs. Ricky Stewart, he was in fine form after that Raiders win over the Bulldogs. Really, taking an opportunity to have a bit of fun with all the critics in his post-match press conference. As for South, look, they came out of the blocks flying against Newcastle, but mate, nearly let it slip after Newcastle stormed home in the second half. I think this one shapes up as another good match, another good contest. Ricky probably still believes his side can sneak into the top 8. I'm not so sure. While the Rabbitohs have probably now cemented their spot in the finals race. I'm going to go with the home side. I think Canberra can ride the momentum from last week, and I think they might get the job done at home.
Mate, my overwhelming thought last week was how tough a gig coaching is. Like, I actually felt for Ricky Stewart last week, and I don't say that lightly. But his Raiders finally put in a great performance against the Dogs, and Ricky must have been wondering where has that form been all season. But on the other side of the equation, Wayne Bennett, well, he's been coaching now for the better part of 50 years. But mate, the nerves must have been tingling with him as well. South almost let that 14-point lead slip, and it came down to the last 30 seconds. But I agree with you here, Johnny. Mate, I like the Raiders. They look like they finally clicked into gear. So Strange played well. KO Weeks was playing much more direct. Their forwards got over the top of the opposition. And, mate, I've said it once. I've said it twice. I'll probably say it from here until the end of the competition. I do not trust this South team at all. I actually think the Green Machine is going to get them and get them pretty comfortably.
Let's go to the Warriors versus the Dragons. Look, the Warriors should win this one against an improving Dragons outfit, especially with the game being played in Auckland. It's obviously a massive boost for the home side. Mate, I just want to give a big shout out to Wade Egan. I've been watching him play quite closely the last few weeks. Mate, his form has been outstanding. He's such a running threat from dummy half, and his service out of dummy half to his teammates is very, very slick. So I'm expecting another strong performance from him, and I think obviously the home side should get the points in New Zealand this weekend.
But the Warriors last week were the epitome of a contender. They just coolly dispatched a very, very sad Tigers outfit. We talked about Campbelltown Stadium and how the poor old Tigers just can't seem to get a victory out there. But mate, it's pretty far from home for the Warriors. But they were very professional. They were very ruthless. At the end, they just, again, are taking the Tigers to the cleaners. Mate, the Dragons, they're coming off a bye. They're also coming off a month of pretty steady football that culminated in their defeat of the Tigers. Now, when I think about this, JC, it might be hard to get a beat on this game, considering both of their last start victories were actually against the Tigers, and we know that they're going backwards at a rate of knots. But I've never been one to shirk a task here, JC. I am going for a closer than expected Warriors victory. I think the Dragons will turn up and they'll give the Warriors a bit of trouble, but not enough to win the game.
Let's go to the Bulldogs versus the Tigers. Look, I don't want to say this is a nothing contest, but it certainly feels that way after the performances of both teams last start. The Tigers, as I mentioned earlier, mate, they were extremely disappointing. While the Bulldogs, mate, they looked like they forgot they were still playing for a final spot. It was actually a costly loss for a team that had so much to play for. For me, probably the big talking point in this match is probably the battle between Lachlan Galvin and Jerome Luai, especially after the recent news that the Tigers are happy for Jerome to leave one season early if he can secure a club. So I'm gonna go with the Bulldogs, but not picking with much confidence there, to be honest.
Mate, you're too diplomatic, but I'll say it for you. This is a nothing contest. Mate, last weekend, the Tigers were pathetic. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Yeah, they just didn't turn up at all. That was a nowhere performance. The Dogs, that was a less than nowhere performance. Mate, I sat down excited about that game, and within 15 minutes, I was just watching it going, what's going on? But I did this a few weeks ago when Parramatta played the Bulldogs. I think with mediocre teams, the safest way to tip is just go with season split based on home ground advantage. The Tigers beat the Bulldogs in round one, playing at home. Mate, I'm actually tipping the Doggies, but I'm only doing it because they're playing at home. But both of these teams are just not even worth the breath I'm expending on them.
Okay, let's go to the Titans versus the Seagulls. It actually feels like these two teams only played a few weeks ago for some reason. Look, for Manly, that 1 point loss to the Cowboys was a costly result. It actually sees them actually drop out of the top 8 for the first time in a little while. The Titans, meanwhile, look, they definitely showed a little bit more fight against Melbourne, but I just think Manly, mate, they've simply got a little bit more to play for, and that should get them over the line, even though their last sort of 6 weeks or so has been pretty up and down form. And I'll tell you what, we'll soon find out if the Fosball effect has completely worn off, if the Titans cause an upset, but I'll go for Manly.
Well, mate, we're going to go beyond Fosball. This is actually the Fos Bowl. How exciting. I'm sure to get as many viewers as the Super Bowl. Now, mate, in terms of Manly, they're now wedged somewhere in between their dreadful form of the first month and their red-hot form of the month after Kieran Foran took over. And I think that's probably a pretty apt summary of what they are as a football team. I also think they're really struggling. I mean, it was obvious last week that they missed Luke Brooks and his steadying hand. They just couldn't grind out that victory after getting to that 14-point lead. And again, I think if Brooks was there, he would have been a much more steady hand on the rudder. The Titans, mate, they stuck close to the Storm. Then they lost in the most Titans way possible. Mate, I'm actually going for the Titans in this one. I know it might sound a little bit strange, but, mate, they do have a bit of attacking firepower. I just think this Manly team's mediocre.
Wow. Okay. We'll wait and see for that one. Let's go to the Dolphins versus the Cowboys. Look, it's the how could you call it? The humiliated Dolphins take on the Cowboys. Mate, who are coming off that, as I said, that dramatic golden point victory. I think this will be a pretty good contest between two sides that love to play attacking football. Mate, I really love watching the Dolphins when they get their rhythm with the ball. But then again, I also love watching the Cows when they also play that exciting brand of football with Tommy Dearden, Scotty Drinkwater, and I like that kid Jenkins. They definitely create a lot of opportunities. Mate, this is going to be a pretty important clash for both teams because if you look at them on the ladder, they're pretty close together. So in this one here, I'm actually going to go for the Cowboys to get the job done at the where are they playing at Suncorp or they're playing at Redcliffe?
They're playing at Suncorp.
Suncorp. So I'm going to go for the Cowboys.
Mate, yeah, the biggest shame of last weekend was the fact that it put a fork in the Finns for 27. Mate, they aren't serious anythings after that effort. I actually thought it was quite a shame because they'd really looked good for the previous couple of months actually, and I was enjoying watching their football. The Cowboys again, I didn't think they had Sunday's performance in them, but they showed a lot of resilience. They came back time after time. That Melly team was there for the taking, and you know what, mate, the Cowboys stood up and took them. I do think though, Johnny, with this game, that there will be a bounce effect with the Dolphins. But the Finns can't be as bad as they were last weekend. The Origin stars are coming back. I also talked last week that the Cowboys aren't very good when they're playing away in Queensland. So, mate, I'm actually tipping the Finns just based on that bounce back and them playing at home.
All right, let's go to the game of the round. So it's my boys, the Roosters versus the Storm. Look, hopefully all the Roosters Origin players have had enough time to rest and recover, because this is a pretty big clash against Melbourne. So we should have Teddy, Walker, Collins, and Robson all returning, and you'd think the Roosters should be too strong. As I said earlier, we were pretty ordinary in that first half against the Eels, and we definitely can't afford another slow start against probably a pretty desperate Storm side. Melbourne is still lurking around the top 8, and as we know, mate, these guys have been one of our biggest bogey sides, along with Penrith, over the last 5 or 6 years. And as always, the danger man when we play Melbourne is always Harry Grant. So he tends to have a pretty good game against the Roosters. So hopefully it doesn't happen this Friday night. So I'm going to go for my Roosters. So come on, Chooks. And here's my bold prediction. I'm backing Marky Mark and Daniel Tupu to combine for 5 tries between them. There you go.
Made 5. Well, I stopped at 5, at 15, 25, 105. Mate, lost in the Tupo Jizz Fest on Saturday night was the fact that the Roosters were very, very poor in that first half. Now, some of it was related to Parramatta's defensive pressure, but mate, way too many errors in attacking positions. If anything, they kept an inferior Eels team in the contest. Still, mate, they did what good teams do. They bought the goods in the second half. And, mate, I'd like to give a particular shout out to Spencer Leniu. He has turned around his ordinary early season form. He was really dynamic in that game. And Nafahu White, mate, if he isn't the best prop in the competition, he's certainly in the conversation. Mate, the Storm, they look competent, but that's about it. Mate, if the Roosters sort of make errors, I think the Storm can stay in it. But ultimately, I don't think they're going to be able to match the Chooks forward and backline firepower. I actually think the Roosters are going to win quite comfortably. Okay, now this is the moment that everybody's been waiting for, JC. Freeballing is, mate, freeballing's back to me this week. We are in for an absolute treat because it's not a freeballing, Johnny. It's not a wit and wisdom of Noah's. I mentioned the fact that I was taking some inspiration from Asher here, mate. It is the glittering debut of Noah's Diabolical Waffle. Now, Johnny, mate, I have mixed emotions about Spotify. Maybe I shouldn't say that because half of our listeners are probably listening on Spotify at the moment. But mate, when I'm on Spotify, I always have the nagging little thought that the artists are getting stiffed. Now, when I was 8 years old, I used to spend 2 months saving up. I'd save up $8 or $9. And mate, then I'd dutifully shuffle off to Stockland Mall at Maroubra, where you probably spent a bit of time as well. And mate, I'd buy the latest Kiss album or Urban Chipmunk or Hitwave 81, the album that I've been eyeing off and saving for the previous 8 weeks. Mate, now with Spotify, I pay $26.99 a month. And that's for my entire family. There's 6 of us. And that's so we can access pretty much every piece of music that's ever been recorded. Now, mate, just to put that into context, $8 in 1980 is worth approximately $32.54 in today's dollars. So I'm actually saving about $5 to get sort of my hands on 60 million songs. Mate, the flip side of that though, is we've got the world of music literally at our fingertips. Now, I don't know if you're a music fan, mate, but I'll be in the backyard mowing the lawn or at the gym or going for a walk to work. And if I have the sudden urge to listen to Sublime or Rapping Forte, but if I wanted to listen to the soundtrack to The Little Mermaid followed by the Mars Volta, mate, I'd pull my phone out of my pocket and I'd dial it up in about 3 flat seconds. Now, this has the effect of taking the listener and certain unexpected directions, Johnny. And mate, that's what happened to me about 3 years ago. I fell down a Spotify rabbit hole with Thin Lizzy, the great Irish hard rock band of the 70s and 80s. And mate, the net effect was that now they're not only a regular on my listening rotation, but they're actually one of my favourite bands. Now, Johnny, at this point, I can see you looking a bit flummoxed, a bit perplexed, but mate, there is a reason for this. There was a catalyst that I actually started listening to Thin Lizzy. And mate, I knew Thin Lizzy for the very, very same reason that you likely know them, even though at this particular point, you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. Mate, their classic song, The Boys Are Back in Town, was the very first song used in an advertising campaign for the New South Wales Rugby League.
Mhm.
Now, mate, you can probably remember this. It was the league's first ever promotional tune. It was unveiled for the 1985 season, and it was used for 4 years. So they used it up until 1989, when the juggernaut that was Tina Turner took over. So she came in 89 with What You Get Is What You See. And then, of course, the immortal Simply the Best, which rivals Australian cricket's Come On Aussie as the greatest promotional campaign in the history of Australian sport. Now, mate, just taking it back to The Boys Are Back in Town, it was a perfect fit for rugby league at the time. Mate, lyrically, it was apt. You can probably remember this. I know I can. They'd hammer it in February and March. Mate, by the time the season started, we'd be so excited for the football and we'd be wrapped attention. Mate, it also musically was perfect. There's something about electric guitar riffs and rugby league that just goes together. Mate, it also wasn't too hard. It wasn't Metallica's Ride the Lightning, so it didn't scare off the women and the children. But mate, more than anything else, that promotional campaign ushered in the commercial era, when rugby league, for better or worse, became a product and a pretty lucrative one at that. Now, maybe it always had been. We're always talking about the fact that rugby league professionalised because of the number of people coming through the gate. But mate, I can't help but think that along with Nick Politis's Sydney Ford sponsorship of the Roosters that you talked about a couple of months ago, it was a sign of the increasing commodification of the game. Now, mate, the promotion of the game with songs proved to be a mixed bag over the next 3 decades. I mentioned the great Tina. Mate, anybody who was raised in the 80s and 90s, that is indelibly seared into our memory. Whenever we hear Simply the Best, we go back to the era of Mal Meninga and Laurie Daley and Alfie Langer, Kevy Walters. But mate, we also had a similar success with That's My Team. Again, something that you can probably remember quite fondly, which was an adaptation of the Hoodoo Guru's What's My Scene. Mate, it had a similar formula, taking a great song, giving it a bit of a rugby league twist, but it also had a local flavour. The Hoodoo Gurus are actual fans of the game. Dave Faulkner, the lead singer, is a massive Cronulla fan. But Johnny, this is rugby league. We all know that there's a yin to every yang. There were the promotional debacles. Mate, do you remember Chumbawamba's Tub Thumping? I get knocked down and then I'll get up again. Mate, it wasn't a bad song. It probably seemed like a great idea to the advertising executives as they were wiping the residual cocaine from their nostrils. But mate, the whole campaign, it was confusing, it was discordant, it was completely unrelated to football. Then there was one from Tom Jones. Mate, Tom Jones is like Tina Turner. He's undeniably awesome. But for some reason, having a man sing a song which was What a Man didn't actually seem to work. And then there were a couple that stood out for the wrong reasons. Mate, you remember after the Super League War, we had the Thomas Keneally poem, Blow the Whistle Ref? I have no idea what was going on with that. But then the worst of the lot, mate, John Bon Jovi's This Is Our House. Now, mate, it actually reminded me of the days when we'd get American celebrities in to host a Logies and they'd turn up and have absolutely no idea what they were doing there. And that was pretty much the effect of the John Bon Jovi advertising campaign. Now, mate, the interesting thing has been that in the last few years, in fact, probably for the better part of a decade, mate, the game hasn't actually needed a defined promotional campaign. And to me, it's indicative of how rugby league and how sport in general has become its own entertainment juggernaut. I mean, mate, we're talking 24/7 cable channels. We're talking saturating the media. And, mate, it now brings viewers in of its own accord. In fact, it's probably the exact opposite. At events like Origin and the Grand Final, artists, even big overseas acts, come in and use it to actually promote their tours or their albums. Now, I need to finish this as I started, JC, with Thin Lizzy. Mate, I mentioned the fact that they are now one of my favourites, and amongst their best songs is Running Back off the fantastic Jailbreak album. I'd encourage everyone to go check it out on the Spotify. Mate, it's ostensibly about a long-lost love, but mate, it could equally describe the experience of being a Parramatta fan with these lyrics. You ready for them, Johnny? When they say it's over, it's not over. There's still the pain. And I'd come running back to you again. I'd come running back to you again. But when I was laying in bed at 1:30 on Saturday morning, just wondering what Invel Parramatta had just done against Eastern Suburbs, that was pretty much the effect. But mate, I'll be running back to them in a few weeks' time when they front up against Penrith, which will probably cause me even more pain. So, mate, we're on to the outro now, and mate, it's time for Vox popping. And Johnny, I've been a little bit scathing, perhaps a little bit unfair. Again, my mother's always on to me about me being a little bit unfair to you. So, mate, Sue Mitchell is in your corner. But, mate, I had a mini meltdown of sorts on Saturday night during the Chooks Eel games. And, mate, you were privy to that. I'd just like to say, I incidentally almost predicted the scoreline as well. But, mate, here are some of my texts from Saturday night. And, Johnny, I'm reading these in retrospect, and I'm not particularly proud of them. So, ready? The first one. And you blokes are playing with 14 men to boot. The second one, they should have just hired the opposition tonight for Tupo night. I'd be embarrassed to be a Chooks fan. Mate, after that, I just started lashing out. When they presented the Chad Robinson Cup, which was a very nice initiative between the Parramatta and the Eastern Suburbs clubs, mate, I texted, watch it well, boys. That's the only trophy the Chooks are getting this year, followed by ... and the Adam G Cup. So my sincere apologies to you, Johnny, and also all the boys on our WhatsApp thread. Mate, so just see what Parramatta does to me. Oh, my God. What's it doing to me, Johnny? Well, what are your Vox Pops, mate?
Oh, look, Noz, clearly, 40 years of frustration with,
Boiled the over.
with some of your comments on Saturday night. But, when you said, watch it well, boys, the only trophy that Chooks are getting this year, mate, I thought that was a bit cruel. But look, as your mate and partner in this program called NRL Offside, I'm going to forgive you. But I won't lie, I did have a laugh with your follow-up comment, the Adam G Cup. Bloody hell. So look, I can't wait for your comments during this week's games. And look, as our dear friend Asher has said, mate, that was a lot of, what do you call it? Diabolical waffle.
But I'm a diabolical waffle machine. But we are now mercifully at the end of the program, Johnny. So as always, I'd like to thank all of our listeners for joining us. Hopefully I didn't drive too many of them away with my Thin Lizzy diatribe. Remember, you can communicate with us, guys. So we've got jc@nrloffside.com. That's in addition to my email address, which is noz@nrloffside.com. Send through all your thoughts, guys. We look forward to receiving feedback from our listeners week after week. We've got our Insta handle at NRL_offside. We've got our TikTok, NRL Offside. And I haven't spent any time trying to work out Threads, but I know we're on Threads as well, Johnny. So mate, get us onto that. So guys, in addition to checking us out on social media, make sure you subscribe. If you're listening on the YouTube, just tap the little button at the bottom, the same for Spotify and Apple Music. It'll make sure that we hit your feeds bright and early every week. But as always, guys, thank you very much for listening. It has been our pleasure.
Stay well, listeners, and look forward to next week. Have a good week.
And now here they are, the most daredevil racers to ever whirl their wheels in the NRL wacky races. We have the self-combusting Dolphins incinerating their premiership hopes. AFB loving the smell of napalm in the morning. Scotty D lassoing the Swansea Eagles. Toops in his number 300 tri-mobile. The Bulldogs broke down Jalopy. And Jai in his cane-toed hat. And don't forget Supercoach Billy plummeting back to earth.